I'd sort of just think, what would Christie do? And is that too crazy of an ending? No, Christie's done loads of crazy things. That's fine.
There are tales of rogues and whores, of stratagems and wars. There's a tale for every season of the year. There are tales of knights and queens, of drudgery and dreams. There's a tale for everybody here. There are stories galore, in volumes by the score, on every subject throughout history. It's all waiting in Pandora's library.
Welcome to March's episode of Pandora's Library, a monthly podcast about books that feature the mysterious, fantastical, dark, and creepy elements of life. If you found the show as an audio podcast, you might like to know that you can also watch it as a visual podcast on Spotify and YouTube. My name is Karen Hamilton-Vile. I'm a paranormal murder mystery author of a series of books about Ada Baker, a medium who solves murders with the aid of the ghost she lives with. This month, I'm interviewing Natasha Bache, who is the author of several books, including her Arcane Tales of Tamsin Pride series. She studied English literature and philosophy at Keele University, then completed a master's degree at Warwick University before becoming an editor at the well-known publishers HarperCollins. In 2015, she co-founded a design agency with her husband called Books Covered, and she currently lives in Shropshire, England, where her Tamsin Pride series is set. Natasha, welcome to the show.
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Karen.
Thank you for coming. So can you tell us about your Arcane Tales of Tamsin Pride series?
Yes, so The Winter Crone is the first book. It's a trilogy, and it follows a witch by the name of Tamsin Pride, who goes back to her grandmother's cottage after she's been found dead, and discovers that her death may not be as straightforward as it first seemed. And along the way, she discovers lots of secrets about their family past, and the trilogy sort of has her art into becoming a witch.
And could you read us a piece from it?
Yes, absolutely. This is from the prologue. Just got my glasses on. Spring was in full bloom at Rosemount. Sylvia's beloved garden was awash with May flowers. The white anemones and deep burgundy tulips swayed in the cool breeze, indifferent to the panic rising in Sylvia's chest. Her heart pounded as she hurried to the poison garden, as fast as her old bones could carry her. She wheezed as she fumbled in her apron for the kitchen scissors. Her mind raced as she looked back over her shoulder towards the house. Rosemount was bathed in a crystalline blue light, with a clarity you could only see when the winds of spring blew. Yet inside the cottage there was darkness. That morning, an egg had slipped out of her fingers into the pan, shell and all. The yolk broke, and as she slid it into the bin, she called Bridie, informing her she wouldn't be going to the Maypole dance. She'd better play it safe and stay indoors. Sylvia would have laughed at the irony had she not been so terrified. How she wished she was there now, watching the young girls, hair streaming, weaving their ribbons in and out, while Morris dancers hopped, waving their blue handkerchiefs. Her back stiff, Sylvia swooped down to the most lethal plant she nurtured. The bulbous purple flowers of aconite bobbed as she gingerly touched the leaves. The cardinal rule, one that had been drilled into her as a child, and one she had reminded her daughter and granddaughter of nearly every day, was never ever go into the poison garden bare-skinned. Now, however, she had no time for gloves. Holding the scissors, her gnarled hands shook as she carefully snipped off the leaves. She was shaking so much the scissors fell to the ground. Sylvia shoved the aconite leaves deep into her apron pocket and turned back to the house. Taking a deep, calming breath, she stood for a moment, composing herself. Without thinking, her hand travelled up to her neck to touch the locket she had taken to wearing. With a sudden resolve and a deft yank, she pulled the chain, snapping it. She dropped it amidst the foliage, where she hoped it would not be found. On creaking legs, she made her way back to the house, pulse racing in the knowledge of what awaited inside.
Beautiful. I really enjoyed reading it.
Oh, thank you so much.
And there's a lovely quote on your website from Sarah Painter, who people might know created the Crow Investigation series, which I've read myself.
Yes, that's right.
So she said, "The Winter Crone is a magical debut from a promising new author," which was a really lovely quote to have, wasn't it?
Yeah, she's we actually met Sarah through Books Covered. My husband did her covers, and so she kindly my husband reached out to her and said, "Would you like to read my wife's book?" And yeah, so she kindly read it and gave me a great quote.
Fantastic. And what other books have you published?
So I The Winter Crone was the first book I'd ever written. I did write a short story that was part of an anthology called Everyday Kindness, which L.J. Ross put together, and it has many indie authors and published authors, and the proceeds went to Shelter for charity. And then after Sister of the Moon and The Witch of Shadows, this year I published 12 Ways to Kill Your Family at Christmas, and that was through One More Chapter at HarperCollins. So that's a Christmas darkly comedic murder mystery. And then at the end of this month, I have The Magical Matcha Tea Shop, which is a cozy fantasy coming out also with HarperCollins.
Oh, I saw that. It looks fantastic. I do quite like
Oh,
a
thank
cozy
you.
read myself.
Thank you.
And you very kindly gave me a copy of The Winter Crone, and it felt like you
Yeah.
understood modern witchcraft quite well. You certainly knew a lot of the terminology. Do you have an
Mhm.
interest in witchcraft, or was it just good research?
Yeah, I love to research everything, from mythology to folklore to witchcraft, and I love films about witches, programs about witches, um, and so, but I'd never wanted to be a writer, as such. But my sister and her best friend were actually into witchcraft, and when my sister died, her best friend at her funeral told this whole story about how they went into the woods together and made wands, and it kind of inspired me, actually, and I started reading more about witchcraft and researching it, and I thought, I love this. I'm just going to go for it and write a book, because I really enjoyed learning about it. And one of my favorite films is Practical Magic, and I loved The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina when it was out on Netflix, and I sort of wanted to marry those two worlds. I'm not a practicing witch, but I do enjoy learning all about it.
It's very popular at the moment, aren't they? Witch books.
Yes, yeah. I wanted to when I was looking for things to read, often obviously it's more around witch trials and 18th century and onwards, and I wanted to read something more contemporary. So I thought, well, yeah, that's the kind of the route that I'd like to go: modern witchcraft and contemporary fantasy.
And who was your favourite character to write in the Arcane Tale series, and why?
I actually fell in love with the Siren, also known as Vivian. Um, I I love her. She's very vivacious and quite that sort of that female rage she has towards her captor, Gavin Hardcastle. I really enjoyed writing that, and actually I found that similarly when I this is a spoiler, but book two, I won't give the spoiler away, but there's a villain in book two, and I quickly learned that I love writing villains. So they're the ones that I actually really enjoy writing. Um, rather than my sort of main characters, really.
Yeah, they're great
Um,
fun, aren't they? Yeah.
yeah.
So there's quite a few novels on witches out there. What makes your book stand out from the rest?
Um, I I haven't really. I mean, every author says this about their book, but haven't really read anything that sort of marries comedy plus witchcraft and folklore and sort of stitches them together. I really wanted it to feel small town, almost Vicar of Dibley-esque, with the town council and those older characters coming together and those funny dialogues between them, but also having quite a dark thread that runs through it. Paranormal. I love the woman in black, so I sort of weaved all these things together that I really love. Um, and yeah, so I haven't read anything like that, although I'm sure there are books out there that probably are like that, but I haven't ever read one.
It's almost felt a little bit folk horrorish with this sort of cult of witches living in the village that most
Yes.
people probably weren't even aware of were there. And
Yes, yeah, and I wanted it to feel I wanted that levity of the comedic characters, but also have that kind of Wicker Man feel, also that kind of small town. What are they going to do? Like, what are these secrets that are hiding just beneath? Um,
so, I mean, the book is set in much Wenlock, isn't it? A market town in the county of Shropshire, England. So why did you
yes.
decide to set your novel there?
Well, when I was a child, we had a family friend that they lived in a cottage in Much Wenlock. It's actually called Homer. It's the small village just outside of Much Wenlock, and it was a really fairy tale cottage, sort of gnarled trees outside, and that classic quintessential English cottage that just felt so magical,
Hmm.
especially as a child. And I've always thought about that house ever since then. And during lockdown, my husband and we'd always go for long walks at our local National Trust property, Attingham, and I would always talk about this house and what it was like, what it looked like, um, and as the ideas were progressing, and as I was reading more around folklore of the local area and witchcraft, I thought I definitely want to set it at that cottage with that cottage in mind. Um, yeah. So, and then I also during lockdown I did a local loop of the area, and there's a lovely house called Rosemount, so that's sort of where that name came from.
Oh, it's a really lovely area. I mean, I went there on my honeymoon. If anybody's never been,
Oh
it's well worth a
wow.
visit, isn't
Yeah.
it?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It's very rural, but not too rural, and yeah, it's very pretty.
So it's the dream of many authors and readers, I think, to own a bookshop. If you were running a bookshop, what would it be like?
I've thought about this question a lot, and I actually, I actually think I would run a bookshop for indie authors,
Oh, lovely.
and it would definitely involve tea and coffee. And then I was like, I'd love to have exclusive editions of for indie authors. Give them that opportunity. I don't know. I mean, obviously I haven't thought this far along down the road of actually how that would be put into practice, but I'd love to do events for indie authors and have a more indie author space rather than competing against the local bookshops, which very well are all traditionally published led
Mm.
bookshops, obviously. Um, and have exclusive editions of sprayed edges, hardbacks, collector's editions, signed copies, and just give indie authors like a space to come to do readings and um, yeah. So anyone is free to steal my ideas, because I'm not going to do that. I don't have the funding, but if someone would do that, that would be amazing.
I can just picture in my mind all the listeners going, yes, yes, that's what we
Yeah.
want.
Yeah. Let's all club together and make that happen.
So often people say, oh, just can't get into traditional bookshops because, the
Yeah,
Richard Osmans of the world have got all the shelf space. And
well,
I
that's
can see
very
why
true.
they don't want to take a risk on an unknown author. But yeah, that'd be amazing, wouldn't
Yeah. Well, yeah, my favorite authors are indie authors, actually, and two of them are, their nicknames are the Twisted Sisters, and they wrote the Zodiac Academy, and even they are stratospheric level of sales, and they're not in my local bookshop,
it?
and
Wow.
it is extremely hard to get copies of their books. Extremely hard.
Wow.
They bring out their own books on their own website, but even even with their success, it's not geared up for an indie author.
And what person in your life has helped you most on your writing journey, and how?
That would definitely be my husband. It was actually always his dream to write, and it was
Yeah.
always my. So I haven't stolen his dream. He's fine with it, but um, he always, when on our first date, he was telling me all about this book he'd written, and he always wanted to be an author, and I always thought I couldn't do that. I don't have the confidence. The second I get a bad review, I would just run away and hide, never to be seen again. I don't know how to write. I don't have any training. I've never done any creative writing courses, all those reasons. But I've always loved books, and my dream was to be an editor, and I did become an editor, obviously. And now I look back on my career now as an author, and I actually think I was always that this was so much better suited to me than being an editor, and I wish I'd have realised sooner and started writing years ago, and just I wish I'd have written as a teenager from university, but I was always put off by everyone who did creative writing and how serious it all was, and the critiques, and I didn't want to be critiques. And so I was like, no, 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 I'm going to be an editor. I'll work behind the scenes. And um, so I as again after my sister passed away, I just thought, no more of this, like, self-doubt and this crippling shyness. I'm just going to do it. She always said, oh, because we both grew up, my mum, she was always a publican, so we lived above a pub. And I used to spend my youth just listening to people's conversations in the pub, and my sister always said, you should write a book. We would have so many funny anecdotes and stories from things we've heard over the years, and characters and the way they speak, the way they act. She always said that. I was like, no, 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 I couldn't. And I just thought, no, I'm just going to go for it.
Brilliant. Um, so you have several fabulous words sprinkled through your writing, such as petrichor, one of my favourite words.
Oh, I
Are
love that
you
word.
a collector of words like me? What's your favourite word? And what does it mean?
I love words. Usually I love words that are to do with nature or to do with being annoyed, being angry, like vexed or irked, or but one of my favourite words, because it reminds me of my granddad, is pluviophile. Which is very apt for this year, obviously, because it's non-stop rained. But my grandfather loves the rain. He loves the sound of rain, and he even loves rain so much that when it's like a storm, he will go out and walk in the rain. Hood up, waterproofs on. Um, so much so that he left his iPhone in his pocket, and it filled with water, and drowned his poor iPhone. But yeah, he is a pluviophile, and I love that word.
One of my favourites is I read it in a book about bedizened, which meant
Yeah.
to gaudily decorate like a Christmas tree, from the
Oh, I
80s or
love
something.
that.
So
I
I tried to
absolutely
use
love
it
that.
in one of my books after reading that.
Yeah, that's a brilliant word.
If you were ever in danger, which of your characters would you be turning to for help?
Mm, I think I think Ellis, because obviously in my books, Ellis, he is a professor. He, as the series goes on, you see more and more of his knowledge and him trying to help Tamsin sort of realize her powers and um, come into being, as it were. So probably Ellis. Although I love Bridie and how funny she is. I don't know how helpful Bridie would be, but she's sort of the matriarchal figure who's no nonsense, sort of straight talker. But I have a lot of those people in my life, so maybe someone more level-headed, like my husband, or like Ellis, who can stay calm in a tricky situation.
I definitely need that myself. My husband's very, he'd be a great paramedic or something. I'm like, panic! He's like, no,
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah, I'm sort of a shut down type of person and just a switch off type of person.
So, as you mentioned, you were editor at HarperCollins Publishers, where you
Yes,
worked, it's said, on the Agatha Christie and Tolkien estates. So what did that entail? How
yes.
did it influence your writing?
Well, Tolkien especially, and Christie, but Tolkien has sort of informed my life to a certain degree. I became um, obsessed, for want of a better word, with Tolkien when I was at secondary school. And it was actually what made me want to become an editor and to work in publishing. And I always had a dream of I love his work so much. I love Silmarillion so much. I want to work on his books, but obviously he's no longer here. So how would that work? And it's why I studied English literature. It's why I did a master's, because I thought I really want to work in publishing, but I know it's so hard to get into publishing. Maybe if I do an extra year, it will give me a little bit of an edge. And actually, it didn't give me an edge having the masters, but I did meet people along the way at doing the masters that helped me get a foot in the door. But I still, I did work experience in publishing, and then finally met someone who knew someone who was Tolkien's publisher, and gave me his phone number. And I am not this sort of person at all, but it goes to show, I guess, how obsessive I am about this about JRR Tolkien. I phoned his publisher, who's David Braun, who is still my very good friend today, and asked him if he had any work experience. And he said, "Oh, this is great. No one ever just sort of approaches me, which I can't believe, and offers me to help for free." Not for free, for £50 a week, as work experience was back then. And so initially that entailed a lot of admin type of work, a lot of not very glamorous work. But then, as I worked there, they were filming the Hobbit films, and so we had a whole host of film tie-in books that needed to be edited and published. I got to write one of them, which was me saying I've never written before. I did write that. Um, and uh, so with Tolkien and Agatha Christie, it entails a lot of sort of trying to keep those estates at the forefront of people's minds, bringing out new books. So with Agatha Christie, we would work with authors who would do continuity projects like Sophie Hannah, and the latest book that's coming out of Agatha Christie is by Lucy Foley.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Yeah, the Grand Alpine Hotel. And so we would work with authors on that. We would do film tie-ins. We would reissue books. We would turn the A format classics into B format paperbacks. And just sort of think of new projects, new ways to work on those authors and around them. I worked for many years with an illustrator called Jemima Catlin on a children's illustrated Hobbit edition, and you'd have to seek approval from the estate, so you'd be working with her, working with the estate. So a lot of approvals, a lot of coffee table books. We compiled a lot of Agatha Christie's photographs that had never been seen before, and worked with an author to write about when she did the grand tour around the world. And so a lot of her photos from Hawaii when she was surfing, and on her archaeological digs where she met her second husband. So we produced a beautiful coffee table book around that. But yeah, I mean, Tolkien has that sort of decision to go into publishing and be an editor was primarily to do with Tolkien, and that's how I first met my husband. So when we were working on the film tie-ins for The Hobbit, he was responsible for doing the covers for the film tie-ins, and we worked together on that, and that's how we met. And I'm still crazy about Agatha Christie and Tolkien. So I feel like 12 Ways to Kill Your Family at Christmas and my witch series, I love fantasy and I love murder mysteries, so I'm heavily influenced by them still.
So you feel it helped with your own writing, did it? Being an editor?
Yes, yeah, definitely. And one of the things that my husband and I always watch are the classic Poirot and Marples. We've watched them time and time again. So I felt like when I came to write 12 Ways to Kill Your Family at Christmas, it felt like, even though I'd never written in that genre before, it felt very familiar to me. And I'd sort of just think, what would Christie do? And is that too crazy of an ending? No, Christie's done loads of crazy things. That's fine.
She's the biggest selling author of all time, isn't she, or something crazy like that?
Yes. Yeah, she is. Yeah. She's sold the most books after the Bible.
Wow.
Yeah.
What an achievement. So if Natasha Bache was a word in the dictionary, what would its description be?
Oh. Description. Oh God. I'm trying to think of something nice to say rather than like like introvert, hermit, writer. I think like I'm sort of like a realistic pessimist / optimist, all rolled into one. I like to think that it would. I don't know. What would yours be? Give me
I don't
inspiration.
know. I think I'd need to have time to think on that. Having the question turned back on me. I don't know. Writer, obviously, but paranormal lover. I'm not really sure. I'd have to have time to think on it, I think.
Yeah, mine would probably be just a cliche, a daydreamer, I guess. So I'd spend a lot of time pontificating, daydreaming, very much in my own head.
I think a lot of writers start out that way, don't they? Daydreaming all the time. I was always told off at the back of the class, don't daydream, pay attention.
Yeah. I am extremely you're sort of archetypal author in the sense that I'm very solitary, I think a lot of authors say that they're solitary, but actually many like writing groups and collaboration. But I am sort of a solitary worker, lone wolf.
This is a strange thing to do in a way, isn't it? Because, like you say, you like being on your own, but then if you become successful, you have to go out and promote your book in public, and
Yeah, yeah,
and then
that's
it's very, very social thing to do. So it's a bit of a conflict.
absolutely. Yeah, that's something that I'm trying to get better at and expose myself more to, and forcing myself to go on camera.
Mm.
And they're not things that come naturally. I'd quite like to just be behind the scenes, but also I think then you get into your own head quite a lot, and it's good to talk to others and
Mm.
meet other authors and know that you're not alone in
I
this
definitely. I mean,
strange
since doing
business.
this, I've sort of found out, that other authors often think the same things you're thinking. You think it's just you sometimes, and they give you
Yeah,
good advice about what shows are good to go to sell your book, or just
yeah.
another way of looking at things. So it's been really helpful in that sense. I've really enjoyed that.
Yeah, yeah.
So this question is from an author friend of mine, Tony Alfred, I think he said that's how you say it,
Mhm.
who's an independent author. And he says, I've noticed when it comes to lists of books to read, e.g. Richard and Judy's book club, it's only books published by the big publishers via
Yeah.
literary agents that ever get mentioned. It just seems a rather cosy closed shop where independent and self-published authors don't get a look in. How do you get through that? There are some real gems from the independents. It just takes a bit more work by reviewers to find them. How can those of us shut out redress the balance?
Mm. I'm very I get quite passionate about this and fired up because, as I said, some of my favourite authors of all time are indie authors, and I sort of feel like I have a foot in both worlds. I've worked in traditional publishing. I have experience in it. I still have a lot of friends in traditional publishing, and now I have independently published books and traditionally published books, and the traction you get, the reach you get through traditionally published books is so much further, it's so much wider. It's just I hate people when they say this, but it's just a fact. It just is that way. A
Mm.
lot of booksellers, well, it's hard to order, to speculatively order from Ingram, and get books in, and I guess they might not know what the quality's like,
Mm.
or if that author's been published. And things like Richard and Judy, you pay a hefty amount of money to even submit your book to be
Right.
considered. So obviously that it excludes a lot of people straight away,
Yeah.
in the sense that a big publisher has the money to splash out to be considered for lists in the first place. Um, so there is a huge. It's better than it was in the traditional world of publishing, in the sense that they are taking indie authors more seriously. It, ish when that indie author is a huge success and they're like, oh, thank you for all your hard work. Now we'll buy that. Like, we'll buy your audience and we'll buy you, and thanks for all that grind you put in. We don't have to. um, and there are uh, lots of booksellers, lots of sales reps that do not take indie authors seriously at all, and still very snobby. Uh, so how do you get around that? For me, this is just me personally. I will this come back to bite me? I don't know. I focus on reaching readers and not uh, awards. Or my goal is to sell books and to reach people who will hopefully really enjoy them and tell other people and follow me and engage with me, and just it's it resonates with them. Uh, when I go into many bookshops, I don't often see reflected the sort of books that are being picked. I don't I don't think they're always the general public's taste. I think they're up the sales reps' tastes, buyers' tastes. The market is led by a very small number of people. And actually, when you look at the Kindle chart, there are many, cozy fantasy authors. There are many indie crime authors doing phenomenally well. That you would never see on a table in Waterstones. So I think for me personally, it's about advertising to the right audience and hopefully finding readers rather than trying to chase a list, I suppose.
So do you do paid advertising, or are you just organic growth only in your...
No. Facebook meta ads basically is the primary.
Right.
Yeah.
So how do you go about creating your characters?
So all of my characters are amalgamations of people that I know, and I get all of my inspiration from strong characters that I know. I never obviously solely base it on someone because they might not like that, but I certainly take characteristics from them and inspiration. My mum comes out with incredible one-liners that I always like. After we've had our phone conversation, I'll type it into my notes and I'll say, "I'm going to use that like that thing that you said on the phone. Is it okay if I use that? That was so funny." So yeah, in my mind, I firmly know, even if it's someone I don't know. For example, Celia in The Winter Crone, she's heavily based on Dawn French, um, and so I'll have that in mind. But then I'll give them extra layers and extra personality and sort of build from there and think about, okay, so what was their past life and how would that determine how they act now, and sort of layer upon layer build them that way.
I was reading the other week that some people, excuse me, some people write character interviews, so they have questions they ask them, and then they fill in all the background that way. I mean, I've always just done it organically as I'm writing, I think, but an interesting approach to do it. A bit organised for me, I think. I'm more
I
pantser.
use Scrivener, and I really love that because I struggle with. Sometimes I will write notes on my phone or in a notepad, but then I sort of forget them and then they never see the light of day. Whereas I like Scrivener because it has lots of folders and it says characters right in your toolbar. And as I'm creating a character, I'll put their name right there so I can't forget them. They're all there. And then you can open that folder and it has that out for you, like their name, their age, their role in the story, what they do as a job. And I'll sort of fill it out so that if I'm like, who was that? Who would I introduce on chapter 3? What was their name and why? And I'll go back to that folder and go, oh yeah.
It's so easy to forget, isn't it? Especially between books and what you've written before.
Yes.
Somebody's like
Yeah.
name or the eye color or something or anything like that.
Yeah, and it's great for filling in like the basics, like dark hair, blue eyes.
You think an author wouldn't forget, but it is when you've got lots of characters, it's really easy to forget, isn't it?
Definitely.
So, what do you feel is the most important element of a story?
I think it's like different for everyone, isn't it? And like very dependent on your style. For me, what's important, what my number one thing that I always try and bear in mind, like I never want my books to be boring, and I have quite a short attention span. So I want to be kept on my toes. and I try and make them quite fast paced. Sometimes that can be, especially with my first book when I didn't have experience, that can be a bit, my editor was like, you need to slow down a little bit, you need to take your time. And so I sort of worked that out in the edits. But I like a fast pace and I love characters. Like that's what I enjoy writing. So I put effort into uh their dialogue with each other, and how, I that's the part that I enjoy.
You have a book cover design company with your husband that you mentioned earlier. Can you
Yeah.
tell us more about it?
Well, my husband actually, so obviously I'm a full-time author, so we started books covered together in 2015, 2016. So we left London and we started working from home, and he has been a book cover designer now for 20 years, at all of the major publishers and some independent publishers. So he was designing book covers primarily for indie authors, and I was offering editing and freelance cover copywriting. And then in 2020, obviously, in 2022, I went full time as an author. And my husband now works at a small publisher called Vinci Books. So books covered still exists, but we don't really take on clients as we used to. He works in, he is a art director and CCO of Vinci Books, and I focus on writing, and he helps me with my advertising and things like that.
So did he do all of your book covers for you?
Yes, all of them except for my latest one, Magical Match Tea Shop, which is done by an illustrator. But yes, he's done all of them.
And so finally, where can people find you online? What's your social media and website details?
So I am just Natasha Bache on Facebook. I have a group, and I'm hoping to like build like a reading room on there. And Instagram is my main social media that I use. It's Natasha Bache _author. So Natasha Bache, all one word, _author. I am on TikTok as also Natasha Bache author, but with no underscore. And I think that's all the social media that I have. I have a website where you can sign up for a free short story, where there's a prequel to the Winter Chrome called A Witch's End. And it's a free download. And I don't bombard with subscriber emails, but if anyone is interested in updates, then I send out a newsletter whenever I've got a new book coming up, or I'm hoping to run some like free giveaways of my books. I've accumulated quite a few now, so I'd like to, do some competitions and stuff. So if anyone's interested, you can subscribe.
And will you be attending any book fairs, Comic Cons, or anything this year?
I'd love to. I was asked to attend one, and unfortunately I couldn't with the Telford Book Club. But no, I'd love to, but I have not been asked. And I'm thinking of attending the SPS Live event in London for self-published authors. But no, other than that, I'm not, but I'd like to.
Yeah, I'd love to do some of the Comic Cons. People keep telling me how great they are and how well they sell
Yeah,
the books, that I just haven't got around to it yet. Maybe after I've written book 3.
yeah. I'd love to do that too. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for talking to me.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure talking to you.
And for everybody listening, next month in April, I'll be talking to writer and screenwriter Stephen Volk, who is probably most famous for the TV show Ghostwatch in the 1990s that scared the nation. So I'll see
That's
you all
brilliant.
then. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye.
There are stories galore in volumes by the score on every subject throughout history. It's all